I gyro, you gyro, we gyro, or at least we do now because it's come around as one of the coolest way to play Switch games after Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus implements it so well, and Splatoon 2 has always been a source of awesome motion aiming. Gabe, it's really interesting to see how Nintendo has refined something that at one point was just a gimmick and wasn't really a efficient way to play games, and now they have converted motion aiming into gyro aiming, and it has enhanced shooters in a way that we're seeing be maybe the most fun way to play. I've seen a number of reputable sources and sites say that they loved Wolfenstein 2 on Switch because of the fact that it has this extra oomph of gyro aiming.
Yeah, I would love to see how Nintendo would tackle a shooter like this. Spending time with Wolfenstein, we've been playing it a lot for review, and just because it's a heck of a good game on the platform. I can't even imagine playing this thing without gyro on Switch. Of course, if you play it on PC or other consoles, that's not available to you. And clearly, mouse and keyboard, I understand that there are superior ways to play. But as far as Switch goes, it feels so natural. And you touched on it, right? In the Wii era, or even in the Wii U era, because it used, the same controllers except for the gamepad, of course. Aiming with motion controls wasn't something people really wanted very much. I remember for some time people were kind of maybe not happy with the Skyward Sword controls, excuse me. Even though they were really good, they were super well implemented. I think they did a fantastic job with that. But that was right around the time that people started souring on motion control in general. That was a thing. I'm not crazy to remember that, right?
No, absolutely. And I think it's the switch over from full-on point and shoot aiming or full-on, body motion gimmick aiming to a fine-tuned aiming with the Pro Controller or with the Switch itself. One, the technology has evolved, and two, it's become more of a little extra versus the entire way. I think if I was using the Joy-Con to aim at the screen, I'd still feel the same. It's not like, oh gosh, we're just blind because it's Switch. It's they have refined and they have found a way to implement it in something that is super cool. I remember going back and or back in the days of sort of that time frame, the Wii, and I played Killzone 2 with the PS3. It was basically like a gun attachment, right? You put the Move controller in, and it served as that. And that just felt goofy. It was fun for 5 minutes. But playing Wolfenstein 2 for hours with gyro, it really does make things better. I feel like it is a slightly more fun way to play. I'll admit, it brings in a bit of an arcadey feel. But at the same time, I think the best analogy is that it feels kind of like a mouse, like controlling on a PC.
Yeah, I'm not going that far, but some of you know my history with gyro, right? When Splatoon 2 first came out, I was not a gyro player. It wouldn't click for me. You kept telling me, no, that's the way to play, and clearly everybody that's amazing at Splatoon, everybody says, hey, you gotta play this thing with gyro. That's the way they're gonna, achieve max level skill with this game. And it just never ever clicked for me. It took months and months and months of me playing Splatoon, and then one day I just said, hey, I gotta get this, I'm gonna try it. And just one day in handheld mode, funny enough, it wasn't even with the Pro Controller, playing Splatoon 2 in handheld mode with gyro is what flipped the switch for me. At some point it just worked, and my mind fully comprehended it, and I understood that, hey, you're not meant to swing your arms around when trying to aim to different places. You of course want to use the sticks as much as possible, and the gyro is just complementary for just a little bit added precision. Once all that clicked in my mind, yeah, I don't want to play Splatoon without gyro anymore. So, it is cool to see my journey, at least with it, how I went from being so anti-gyro. I was so, traditionalist. That was part of the reason why I didn't like the Wii very much. It was a great platform for what it was and everything. Just motion control just wasn't for me. But now at this point, I'm all about gyro.
Yeah, and obviously a mouse is going to be more precise overall. I just meant the ability to kind of fine-tune your movements, right? That's where gyro in Splatoon 2 is really great, and it feels different in a third-person shooter like Splatoon versus a first-person shooter like Wolfenstein, but nonetheless, the same added benefit applies of being able to, just arc your ink just a little bit higher with a little flick of the controller, or being able to tweak up for a headshot instead of a body shot in Wolfenstein 2. And I will bring up sort of the counterpoint here, which is that these games feel better with gyro because the controllers, or in the case like Wolfenstein 2 or Doom with the frame rate, the games themselves aren't equipped to handle shooters as well. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, it's good compensation for it, right? Like, you can't play with 60 FPS. It's not going to be as fluid. So the right stick, the camera, it's not going to like feel as fast. So the gyro definitely does help with that compensation there a little bit.
Yes, and I think, even if the games were running optimally, I mean, Splatoon 2 is a great case where like that does run optimally, right? It's not like, oh god, Splatoon 2 is chugging along and you need a gyro to make sure you're able to hit. I still think it might be a more fun way to play. And the weird part then goes when you go back to like a PlayStation 4 controller, or you go back to an Xbox One controller. I played a bunch of Wolfenstein 2 when we were comparing the graphics of the games on PS4, and I liked it better on Switch because there is a little bit of an extra involvement, right? You're kind of more immersed in the game. You're getting to do a little bit more, and to me, that is really fun. So going forward, if there's an opportunity to play with gyro, I feel like that's kind of how I want to go.
Yeah, for sure. One of the other cool things, though, Zach, is that we've seen this Switch. No pun intended. But so back in the Wii, right? People always ask like, "Hey, is there a way to play this without motion control? Like, how can I play without motion control?" And now, like, the opposite is happening. We see it in our comment section all the time. I've even seen people say that they wish there was gyro in Fortnite. Like, people want gyro in their shooters now, which is wholly different from how things used to be.
Yeah, and I don't know how that fares on other platforms. We can only really speak to the Switch, I guess. I do wonder, like, okay, if more of the popular multiplayer shooters in particular were on Switch, would gyro be something that was incorporated and people liked a lot? Like, gyro aiming in Fortnite. How would people feel about that? I guess that's the best one we can compare to, since it already is on the platform, since we're not getting a Call of Duty this year or whatnot. But how does that player base that is so used to traditional controls take it? Because Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 1, gyro was always something recommended. And I guess Wolfenstein 2 is sort of the first example where it's not like Doom where it was added late. It's there day and date, and it feels like the general consensus is this is the way to go. I would imagine that would be the case, and you probably would convert a lot of people if you were able to incorporate that into these other mainstream shooters.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just another cool little thing that you can only do on this platform. Because, yeah, you can go play Fortnite anywhere. I mean, including your phones. But, still being able to take it with you, or at the very least, just being able to play away from the TV, even if it's within your own house, just play like in the living room while your parents are watching TV or whatever. Having that in your hand and having, this gyro that people claim they want for Fortnite, I do wonder how that would be. Because you're already having a like lesser experience, quote unquote, on Switch, just because it doesn't like run as well as it does on PC and some of the other platforms. But right. Yeah, it would definitely be some added incentive for making Switch where you play Fortnite.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that would still say like, okay, gyro is goofy, right? I even feel kind of bad doing it, which I know is counterintuitive because I'm having fun, but I feel like, okay, this is like a baby way to play a game, like moving the controller. But that I think is a carryover from the Wii point and click, like point and aim era that we described, right? That is where it felt like, okay, this is really gimmicky. This is like for kids. Having a little bit of an extra tweak with a Pro controller, like I don't think that's juvenile in any way. In fact, it's very precise and it is very hardcore in that sense. And, a lot of people might not be as efficient. You kind of described your journey in Splatoon 2. I think if you're not as sure of yourself, gyro can make it a mess when you're playing Splatoon 2. You can be all over the place and feel like you're completely out of control because sticks are something that is, most people are more comfortable with. It can be a way to elevate your gameplay, and by that account, Nintendo has found a way to take motion aiming as something that was for beginners, and now it kind of feels like gyro aiming is something more for experts.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I also love the way that Nintendo's implementing gyro in games that, shooting isn't the focus, right? Mario Tennis Aces is a game that I feel does gyro really well, even though you're not playing with it very often. But whenever you're aiming your super shots or your zone shots, gyro for me is like way quicker. I've tried to play without gyro to see what it feels like. Gyro's just quicker. Zelda, right? Breath of the Wild, aiming the your powers and your bow with gyro, it works perfectly. So things like that, even the smaller implementations of it, I'm really happy with. So, man, I couldn't say this a year ago, but I'm a big fan of gyro now.
Absolutely, they found a really good way to take this feature that could have been completely just a gimmick. It could have been completely discarded. It could have been completely disregarded, and made it something that's natural, made it something that adds to titles, and made it something that we're looking forward to. You're right. With both Zelda and with Mario Tennis, I don't think about it. You go to the super shots just like natural. Aim, boom, you're done. Like, it's not like, oh God, here I am pulling out my, my motion controls. No, it's completely natural. It's something that feels like it's perfectly baked into the game, right? It doesn't feel like an added, and maybe that's the phrase that really kind of nails this, is that it feels like it is perfectly a part of the game to enhance the experience rather than tacked on to make a point or to sell an accessory. I think that's a huge difference this time around in comparison to motion we've experienced, in years past.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll touch on, which was motion for Nintendo, is that they've made the motion that a lot of people were bothered by, like the swing mode, right, in Mario Tennis Aces. That is like almost an extra. That has nothing to do with the main game. You can't go online with motion or anything like that. You have to specifically go to that one mode, and it's like very family friendly. They acknowledge that. So that's not the main way to play, when in the past motion was the main way to play, and they've gone away from that. So I thought that was just really interesting.
Absolutely. Let us know how you feel about Gyro on Switch. Have you come around? Were you someone that was skeptical of motion in the Wii era? And even though it's different now, it's been refined to a point where it feels really good, and it's an enhancement to titles. And are you hoping that more shooters incorporate this gyro? If you haven't had a chance to play, obviously Doom, Wolfenstein, Splatoon are great chances to get your hands on some gyro. I personally like it better with the Pro Controller. Gabe is more fine with handheld, but however you play, I hope Gyro's here to stay, and we're curious to know your take in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest from the Switch and its super cool features. Follow us on Twitter and Discord. We got links in the description below. And until next time, everybody, have a fantastic day. Thanks again. We love you. For myself and Gabe, Switch Force, out.